today's video, we take a look at the Tiger 1. Of course, this is one of the most famous heavy tanks within the game. We're going to get into all of the statistics and stuff like that of the vehicle, and then we'll move into some gameplay. So, of course, if you want to check out either of those, then you can see that on the timestamps of this video. We'll get straight into it right now, and of course we'll start with the statistics and the kind of setup you want to be using and the variations of that setup to be able to maximise your games in the Tiger 1. Obviously this is a tank that a lot of new players go towards because it is, you know, one of the most famous vehicles of World War II, if not the most famous vehicle, and of course you want to be able to know how to take this out effectively on the battlefield if you're playing in other tanks, as well as being able to use it yourself in World of Tanks console or Modern Armour or whatever version you want to call it now. Of course, this vehicle is fully upgraded now. The stock grind of the Tiger is pretty horrid because you start off with this pretty awful 7.5cm gun that, you know, doesn't have particularly great penetration or damage to that matter. But as soon as you get the next one, the 10.5, it can make the tank slightly better. But then again, you probably never want to use this because the penetration values are so low that yes, you may be able to do 350 damage, but you're never realistically going to be able to do that because, you know, what armor tank at this tier, or at least higher tiers when you're getting into those tier 9 matchups that you can do with +2, -2, you're basically never going to be able to be competitive with this gun unless you get into those low tier matchups against tier 5s. Now, as far as the other guns on this tank, of course, you want to be using the 8.8cm with the best accuracy, the most damage, and the highest penetration. But of course, like Wargaming and everything on this tank, it does come at the very end package with the 8.8cm KWK 43L71 gun. Now, of course, this one has the best penetration, has the most alpha damage, best accuracy, and of course you can actually carry a lot of rounds in the Tiger 1, which, you know, makes it nice because you can carry 72 shells, and trust me, you never run out of shells in the Tiger just because the game probably doesn't even allow you to run out of shells because of the timer. As far as the actual other statistics of the vehicle, where does this tank shine? Well, when it comes to armor, this tank doesn't shine. The armor model of this tank is pretty poor, that we can actually have a look at now. It is pretty much just flat, of course. You have very little angling. Angling wasn't really a thing, or at least if it was, it wasn't used very effectively at the period of time when this was designed. So, you know, you've got this very boxy hull armor. Of course, isn't going to bounce anything if the penetration value of your opponent's gun is actually above the actual flat armor value of 100mm, which of course at tier 6 and tier 5, a lot of tanks actually have plus 100mm, so if you're aiming at the Tiger 1, then you want to be aiming at that flat points on the front of the tank. And of course, if you can't actually hit the front of the tank for some unbeknown reason, because most players will not even be able to go hold down in the Tiger 1, then yeah, you'll be able to hit that cupola, which is right on top of the tank. And if you have a fairly decent caliber of gun, you'll be able to overmatch the top of the turret with that really weak armor above the mantlet. So you see that little plate that's kind of angled, really, so you can see it from the front above the mantlet. Yeah, you can actually hit that if you're kind of level with the tank or above it slightly, or even if you're like this. If you actually manage to hit that whilst aiming at the cupola maybe, then you'll still be able to penetrate this tank if you have a caliber of gun over 7.5cm or 75mm. So yeah, any 105s are going to be able to go straight through the top of this turret. Yeah, basically a tank that doesn't really hold up when it comes to its armor model. Now, how does it fare in the actual statistics of the vehicle? Well, you don't have the best aim time, so you got 2.7 seconds, which is by no means awful for a heavy tank, but when you've only got 240 alpha damage, it's not particularly the best that you'll ever see. Of course, the accuracy of the Tiger, like all German heavy tanks, is really nice. So this is the kind of base cost with a couple of equipment. I haven't got any perks on the vehicle, so we'll be able to actually think about that when it comes to putting on a commander. So if you've got that, you can basically reduce all of that down and you'll see what kind of effects you can have. I expect with all of the accuracy perks that you can put on this vehicle, And you can probably get that down to like 0.28 accuracy on a heavy tank. So yeah, you're basically not going to be missing, along with the aim time. That will go down as well if you have got the boost from your commander. Of course, we haven't got that on right now. Of course, 1500 hit points is also very good with this tank. You get also AP, APCR and HE, which is really nice rounds. APCR is really good against coming up against some of those heavily armoured opponents that you may do. 239 penetration with that premium round means that yes, you'll probably be able to go through every single tank that you come up against. However, let's not beat around the bush, they'll be going straight through you as well, and often they have higher alpha damage, especially when you're coming up against those tier 9s. So, is this tank particularly amazing? Well, it's not terrible, but yet again, it's not particularly that nice within the current game meta. You're not that fast, but you do have decent mobility, so let's not, trash it there. 40 kilometers an hour is actually quite nice. You've got decent vision range if you put on coated optics, which I've gone for within this tank, and then 374 still concealment, so we are kind of able to spot further than they can spot us, if that makes sense, at least for 30 meters, but as soon as a light tank comes around, that's basically ruined our kind of spotting potential. I always find it quite nice to do this at the end of the game if you're 1 versus 2, or if you're in a clutch situation where you need to outspot your opponents, or at least spot them if they deal damage to you, or whether they're in your render range and they're shooting at you. You need to be able to detect them, so that's kind of why I go for coated optics sometimes in those clutch scenarios. Other options that you could go with: take out that concealment, advanced concealment. Maybe you want to put on the traction system to get that extra bit of speed and chassis and whole rotation speed. But of course, that is completely up to you. And yeah, I guess that's down to you. Of course, you could then further it with the advanced powertrain to boost up the max speed and horsepower. So you'll be able to go even faster, getting your tank up to 46 kilometers an hour base. And then, of course, if you really wanted to go full speed in the Tiger, you could actually put the enhanced fuel boost on as well to gain an extra 5% max speed and 10% horsepower as well. So yeah, that's kind of the options you could go with the Tiger. Of course, if you really do want to swap out another advanced concealment, which is kind of the one that I would kind of swap out within these games, then you could put on improved ventilation. Some of you I always see mention the 4th equipment slot in the enhanced target info. Yes, I completely remove, or I'd never remove this from my tank. That's because in those scenarios where someone's behind a bush, someone's behind a house, someone's behind an obstacle, why would you want to not be able to actually see where they are? You can't see them because it's the outline of the target that is the most important thing about the enhanced target info. No, it's not that thing in the bottom of the screen that tells you what modules are damaged on the enemy tank. That's pointless. For me, at least personally, I just find it gets in the way, but it is slightly useful for some of you. But I usually turn that off in the settings, and it's the outline of the target and the penetration chance that allow you to kind of pinpoint those areas that you want to be aiming, and that is why it's so crucial. I never take it off. Yes, you could do in some really novel build, something like a Panzer 5.4 maybe, but yeah, where you're getting up close and personal. But in a Tiger, in any of the tanks that you want to be aiming at weak points and basically playing the game, then yeah, I would never swap out enhanced target info. So for those of you interested in doing that, yeah, that's kind of my word of warning. Of course, consumables, you want to be going with enhanced repair kit, med kit, and enhanced rations. Of course, if you don't have enough money to be able to have premium consumables, the kind of way I would do it in terms of getting premium consumables, I would first get the enhanced rations, then I would get the enhanced repair kit, and then if you really want to run full premium consumables, which you really don't need to do, then yes, you could run enhanced medkit as well. But for me personally, I never really run the enhanced medkit in many of my tanks unless I'm really trying to get a third mark on a tier 10, but it's not necessary whatsoever, and often that doesn't really do too much anyway. It's just for those 1% chance of games where maybe you lose 2 crew members from 2 different shots within a game. So yeah, it's kind of those scenarios, but that doesn't happen very often. And yeah, I think that that's kind of something that I should have talked about with this tank. With regards to the stock engine, it's pretty terrible. You do need to get the engine upgrade as soon as you can, along with the tracks as well, because the chassis rotation speed or hull rotation speed is so much nicer when you get that. And of course the engine makes the horsepower go up, which makes the actual speed at which you can turn faster because you've got more horsepower, more power to weight ratio. And so yeah, it's really, really essential that you do get that when you get this tank. So that's pretty much everything for the Tiger 1. We'll get into some gameplay now, show you what it's like in game. It's going to be live gameplay, so we'll see how that goes. I don't know entirely how it will end up, but yeah, we'll get into some gameplay now. So, Pilsen, we are here on this map. This is particularly a decent map, I guess, for the Tiger 1 because it is a predominantly heavy style map. We want to make sure that we get our tank into the right position at the beginning of the game, which is of course defending some sort of building, or at least defending a position, because that's kind of where the Tiger features the best. Of course you can side scrape within this tank as long as they don't have super high penetration, or a super high caliber gun I should say even, and yeah, you'll be able to get some damage straight away. It's kind of essential that you make sure that you conserve your hit points to the late game, because of course when the light tanks are around at the end of the game and the speedy tanks within the game, and of course I forgot to put a commander in my tank, which is going to show you what this tank is like without any perks. So yeah, and then maybe we'll have a gameplay where I show you exactly what it's like with perks. So yeah, guess we'll just have to wait and see how this turns out, but I'm sure it'll be interesting for you guys to see kind of min-maxing the tank, I guess, to the point where we can do well, and to the point where maybe we do bad because we don't have the perks. Right. Essentially, what the Tiger is good for is getting up close and personal with all of the tanks on the enemy team. You want to make sure that you're not going too balls to the wall, if that makes sense, and going straight into their kind of territory too fast, because yes, you won't bounce very many things. Although it is a heavy tank, it's not really a heavy tank, so yeah, it's kind of one of those things you have to think about when you're moving up into position. Now, as you'll see me do here, I was going to go forward to go over to the left, but of course that is probably not a good idea because the majority of their team have not, or our team have not actually spotted over the right hand side, and I'm feeling like there's going to be quite a few over there. We can use this position here actually. I don't know if it's fully good, but yeah, we can get into a position there to be able to deal damage, and of course we want to make sure that they aren't advancing too fast to be able to go into our cap circle, because yeah, if they move into our cap circle, it's never a good thing. And yeah, if we can manage to deal some damage quickly, we'll be able to kind of push that out, avoid them from pushing up too far, and then yeah, hopefully, just hopefully, we'll be able to actually get a few shots into them. Of course, you want to beware of tanks coming forward or pushing into you in the Tiger 1, as far as, you know, making sure that you're getting consistent damage. What you see me do here is just making sure, trying to feather the shot into the KV3. Of course, we don't know entirely if we can penetrate, and what we've done now here, as long as this VK doesn't keep pulling back, which of course he is, which means we can no longer perma-track, and that is really, really annoying. Now, what we've seen here is the enemy team have rushed into our cap, so we're going to have to move. We're going to have to go towards it, which is a little bit unfortunate, and we are going to have to maybe lose a little bit of hit points in order to reset the cap, because the worst thing in the world is losing to cap when you've just started the game. One problem we will have right here is of course the IS. Hopefully we don't get slapped by him as we completely fail and drive straight into a wall. Not what you want to happen, but you can hit on the move with the Tiger 1, which is something that most heavies don't ever feature. You know, the ability to hit on the move, the ability to kind of move into position without getting hit straight away. So what we are doing now is just trying to push the advantage onto the opponents. They've kind of made a misplay, I would say, or at least maybe not a misplay, but you know, they've not made the best of decisions here because they have gone into the cap, but now we do have to push aggressively into them, because what's happening is they are capping. The IS is the priority target because he's the one that was in the cap circle first, and of course if we reset him, it will give our team a bigger advantage to be able to actually reset the cap further. Of course, we want to be able to actually penetrate him or just deal damage to a module on the IS, because if you do that, you can basically reset the cap. If you bounce, however, if you just completely bounce off their armor, you will not be able to reset the cap. If you manage to track, if you manage to damage maybe a viewport, if you manage to just basically do any of that, you'll basically be able to reset the cap, and that is how you avoid being capped out in the majority of situations. So many times I've seen in games people go into the cap circle, I'm going to reset the cap, and all they're doing is auto-aiming and they're just bouncing off of the opponents that they're trying to hit, which of course no one wants to do. No one wants to bounce off of the tanks that they're trying to penetrate, and yeah, we'll just hope that we never have to deal with that. The IS here, of course he's now moving. What we do need to do is try and take out that KV2. We've got the IS now pushing out. We need to get rid of him, because if we can, he's gone already. And now it is time for us in an 8 versus 5, which we should be able to win, because yes, there is a Dreadnought, but he's very low health. The T-43 is no threat to us. He's not really going to be able to do very much, at least not to us when we're on full health, and we preserve pretty well in this game, I'm not going to lie. So we should be able to deal with the opponents fairly easily. And of course the T-43 is a one-shot now, and he's probably going to get taken out by one of our teammates, or us in that matter. There is a TD. It is the T-28 HTC, which we should be able to maybe bounce if we can get lucky. He doesn't actually manage to hit us, which is nice. We'll try and put one into his tracks, which is unfortunately not going to happen. But what we will try and do, of course, the T-28 HTC, if we can manage to hit these bits right here where I'm centrally aiming, then yeah, you'll be able to actually deal damage fairly consistently. What we'll go for now is another tracking shot on him. We've damaged him, and now the HTC is basically out of the game. If we can manage to keep him tracked, which he's basically gone. GW Panther, that's not a nice tank to get hit by. Hopefully he doesn't manage to pen us, which he doesn't, but yeah, we still lose 500 hit points. A nice game considering we didn't have a commander. Nearly 3,000 damage in a tier 7. Of course this is live, so I hope it kind of shows you what this tank can do, even in the worst case scenario where you don't load up your tank with a commander. It wasn't intentional. We managed to get the first mark of excellence, which I don't think we actually even had. It's been a long time since I've played this tank, and of course no commander equipped. We still earned 47,500 silver. Yeah, a nice game to start off with in the Tiger, and we'll try and move into one where we do have a commander. First class badge, of course, and we did get a Defender medal and a Confederate medal along with that first mark of excellence. Now we've popped in a commander, and I just want to go over the actual perks that you'll be using in a tank like the Tiger 1, the essential kind of ones that you want to go for. Of course, with every single crew, I highly recommend having Sixth Sense. It's one of the most vital perks or skills or whatever you want to call it on worlder tanks that you can possibly put in your vehicle, whether that be on your PS4 or Xbox One, of course. Yeah, Sixth Sense is really crucial, allows you to know when the opponent have spotted you, and then what we go for is Born Leader as our second one. We then usually go for Rapid Loading, Steady Aim in that order. And then when you get to that kind of 5th perk slot, that's where you can kind of develop your tank skills into something a little more specific. I tend to go with the generic ones first, then move into the more specific ones, featuring stuff for the actual tank class itself. Of course, for a heavy tank, what I tend to go with is Track Mechanic, because you don't want to be tracked out in the open somewhere where you don't want to be for very long, and that just basically increases the repair speed of your tracks. And trust me, being able to actually repair your track speed is really crucial in a heavy tank, because if you can repair your tracks that couple of seconds earlier that you wouldn't have been able to, it may avoid you taking another shot, it may avoid you taking another retracking shot, and maybe, just maybe, you will avoid some damage, and that is definitely worth it for me. Of course, you could swap it out, but it is down to you. That's just what I prefer. Then, of course, with heavy tanks, I tend to go with some accuracy during turret rotation, because you know, when those mediums and those pesky light tanks are coming around the side of your tank, you'll want to be able to actually hit them on the move. Then I went with situational awareness just to boost up view range, not particularly needed. And this crew isn't necessarily for heavy tanks in particular because we have got mark target, which isn't necessary. Maybe you want to put on something like some of the accuracy ones. Maybe you want to put on run and gun, which will basically allow you to kind of basically be more accurate when you're on the move. Maybe you want to put on clutch braking to improve the vehicle whole rotation speed, which allows you to turn faster and get your gun in front of the right kind of opponent at the right time faster, and so you won't get out-traversed by lights and mediums as often. Now, without further ado, with all of the perks and the crew skills added on and the equipment and basically min-maxing or maxing the tank out possibly, then yeah, we'll actually have a game in the Tiger 1. So we'll see that in just a second. So we're here on port, another great map for the Tiger 1, and we're going to basically show you where the position you want to be taking the Tiger 1 at the beginning of the game. What I see a lot of people making the mistake of on port is actually trying to go down into this position over here, the waste overflow area in a heavy tank, which, yes, you are slow, so you're going to get caught out very easily by the mediums and light tanks that take the position right here on Division Highway. And so, yeah, 9 times out of 10 it's never going to work out the best for you, and so this is why I always go into the corner fighting, where you can use the angling of your tank, and that's basically where I tend to have some of the best games, at least in heavy tanks on this map. If I was in a medium, if I was in a light tank, as long as I've got gun depression, yes, you could go into the middle of the map and fight that kind of area. Of course, the other spawn tends to be the better one for this tank, and so yeah, what we are doing now is trying to take the high ground and put ourselves in a position where we can use the 7 degrees of gun depression that this tank does get to be able to maybe have some good games. Of course, what we want to do is take out the artillery, which we do manage to get one shot into, and then we're going to try and put one into this guy. Of course, it's a little bit risky because these tanks are kind of fairly decent. Now, we're kind of taking quite an aggressive stance within this game, and so yeah, we've kind of got to get a little careful, at least for the most part, because if one of these tanks does decide to just YOLO, it could be very, very bad for us. And of course, these guys can actually see us if we can hit the cupola of that guy, which unfortunately we don't manage to. So now we have to be really, really careful as the IS-2 decides he's going to just pull up, scrapping. Right, so we've lost a third of our hit points, which isn't particularly very good, but we have dealt 2 times the amount that we've lost, so that's not particularly awful. We're going to be able to try and get some shots onto these heavy tanks that maybe have forgotten about us. What we want to do is basically, yes, you can still shoot through these, so be aware that that is still possible. Even if you don't think it is, you can still shoot through them, and so yeah, that's kind of where a lot of people get mistaken. They think, oh well, I can't shoot through these barricades or these walls, it's not possible, but yeah, you can still do that, so be aware of that when you're thinking of doing some aggressive maneuvers. Now what we'll see, hopefully we can hit the Panther, which we don't manage to do, the M10 that is. We want to get him out of the game as fast as possible, and of course what we do want to do is get rid of the T-29, which is probably making an advance that we didn't manage to actually hit. A bit unfortunate there. We'll try and go for the IS, which of course we do hit. See what I mean? You can hit through these areas, you just have to be a little bit lucky, I guess. Not necessarily lucky, but you do need to think about it. You need to kind of take those shots as and when you need to, and potentially you'll have good games. I'm not saying every game is going to be perfect for you. I'm not saying you'll be able to outdeal damage to every single person in the game. You'll be able to ramp up thousands and thousands of damage every game, but it will allow you to be a little more consistent in those games where you just think, I'm going to have a terrible one, I'm not going to be able to deal as much damage as I would have hoped. And you can see this is what happens when you get your tank into the right position, into the right kind of area, and yeah, the enemy team don't have really a chance. Of course, I don't particularly like Port myself. I just find it a map that doesn't really offer too much in the way of versatility. You can't really move around the map too much. Once you've committed to one flank, it tends to be where you end up, and then you can kind of move through that flank to be able to capture the rest of the base. Not particularly my favourite. Of course, yes, you can still have good games. I'm not going to say you can't. But yeah, for the most part, not my particularly favourite map. And of course, we still picked up a decent amount of damage. We've still got a fire for effect, which is kind of the thing that I always try and make sure I do get in World of Tanks. Whether that is playing in a heavy tank, whether that's playing in a medium tank, and of course, whether or not that's actually playing in any tank, of course. So yeah, we did take the hit. I knew I didn't have to take that hit, but you know, who cares? We still needed to get the damage and take in 200 to get the damaging shot and the final enemy of the game picked up. We did get a victory, of course. Don't think we came top. Yeah, we didn't come top because the KV-3 has poached that from us. 1,905 damage, not the best game, and of course we did do better in the previous one, but we did manage to go up on our marks of excellence, which isn't awful, and yeah, a little bit of assistance damage there too, taking the total above 2,000 for the combined damage. There we go, that is the Tiger 1, a really, really good competitive tank, not particularly overpowered, not going to be broken. You're not going to have these games where you think, oh my god, I'm absolutely overpowered and I'm bouncing everything. But yeah, the consistent DPM and the DPM of the Tiger makes this thing a tier 7 heavy that can compete against mediums, which can't be said for very many tanks within World of Tanks console. And I hope that you guys did enjoy the video and the overview and how to play the Tiger 1 effectively within World of Tanks. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and of course if you want to check out more content like this, I've got plenty of reviews like the Tiger 1 on the channel, so you can check those out. Of course, thank you very much to the channel members and everyone else, including you, for watching this video. I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.